Let's talk about tourist visa denials. In this video, I'm going to stay with the same Q&A style as before and walk through real questions people ask all the time, like what are the most common reasons tourist visas get refused and how can you reduce your chances of that happening? If your B1, B2 visitor visa is denied, what can you realistically do next? How soon can you reapply, and when is it smarter to wait? Does a denial stay on your record and hurt you in the future? You're watching Daos. Immigration Updates and Hub. In this video, I want to give you a clear, practical perspective on tourist visa refusals, so you understand what's happening and don't just feel like the system is random and unfair. Let's start with one of the biggest questions. What are some common reasons for tourist visa denials, and how do you avoid them? One of the most common underlying problems is inconsistency. I'm going to assume here that you are not lying or using fake documents, because that's a direct path to serious trouble. I'm talking about inconsistencies between what you wrote on your DS 160, what you say during the interview, any documents you bring, and what the consular officer can already see in their system about your past applications, travel history, or family ties. If those pieces don't line up, even in small ways, your credibility takes a hit. So how do you avoid that? First, be proactive when something changes. For example, if you filled out your DS 160 listing one job, and then before the interview you start a new job, don't pretend nothing changed. Go to the interview prepared to explain, and if possible, bring proof of the new job, like an offer letter, employment confirmation, or recent pay slips. There is nothing wrong with a life change between the form and the interview. What hurts is acting like you're hiding it. Second, don't try to outsmart what you think the officer wants to hear by withholding information. If the officer asks, "Do you have any family members in the United States?" and you think, "Well, I do, but we aren't very close, so I just won't mention them," that's a bad idea. In many cases, the officer already knows about those relatives from earlier applications or systems checks. If your answer doesn't match what they see on their screen, you've just created an inconsistency. Tourist visa interviews are very short. The officer has to make a judgment in a few minutes about whether you are likely to return home after your trip or whether you might overstay or violate your status. Under U.S. law, every visitor visa applicant is legally presumed to be an intending immigrant, someone who wants to stay in the U.S. permanently. Your job in those few minutes is to overcome that presumption. That decision mostly comes down to one thing: credibility. If the officer feels they can trust what you say, your chances go up. If your answers, your form, your history, and your behavior don't match, your chances go down fast. Another common problem is trying to follow a GU script instead of speaking as your real self. Many people arrive at the interview saying things they were told to say. Tell them you are going only for tourism. Say you will only go for 10 days. Use this sentence, it works for everyone. The problem is, officers hear these same canned phrases all day, every day. They know when someone is reciting a memorized answer instead of genuinely talking about their own life. Generic lines like, "I just want to see the beautiful places," or "I only want to visit for 2 weeks," are not convincing if they don't fit your real circumstances. If you sound like you've rehearsed every word, you come across as less trustworthy. The officer may think, if this person is hiding their true reasons, what else are they hiding? A related issue is trying to act like someone you're not. Some applicants try too hard to look extremely serious, extremely formal, or extremely unemotional because they think that looks respectful or professional. Others freeze up completely, afraid to show any personality. Remember, the officer is a human being. They are not just checking boxes. They are gauging who you are as a person in a very short time. If your energy and behavior feel artificial, or if you're obviously forcing yourself into a role that doesn't fit you, you can actually seem more much suspicious. Now, it's perfectly normal to be rushed or nervous. Everyone is nervous at a visa interview. It's not a natural social situation. You know this 2 to 3 minute interaction could affect your travel plans and your hopes. But if you add the pressure of trying to be someone you're not, or trying to deliver perfect answers, you often become more nervous. That extra nervousness can show up as shaky answers, confusion, or even contradictions, again affecting your credibility. One mental trick that can help is to remind yourself, this matters to me, but it is not the end of my life if I'm refused today. I can learn, adjust, and try again later if needed. That mindset can lower the pressure enough that you can speak more naturally and clearly. Another mistake people make is trying to rely too heavily on documents. Many applicants go to the interview carrying a thick folder, bank statements, property deeds, employment letters, invitation letters, travel plans, and they feel that as long as they show this folder, they don't need to explain much. But here's the reality. In a tourist visa interview, the officer is not required to look at even one piece of paper you bring. There is no legal obligation for them to review your documents. Their primary tool is the conversation with you and the information already in their system. That doesn't mean you shouldn't bring supporting evidence. You should bring proof of employment and income, evidence of family and social ties at home, documents showing previous international travel and returns, anything that backs up your story. But think of documents as backup, not the main event. If an officer asks a question, you must be ready to answer clearly in words. You can't just say, "Please look at my papers." Everything is there. The interaction is fundamentally person to person, and that's where the decision is shaped. Let's move to the next big question. What can you do if your tourist visa is denied? First, accept that most people receive a very generic refusal. She under section 213b. That's the standard line. You have not demonstrated strong enough ties to your home country to overcome the presumption of immigrant intent. It usually doesn't give detailed reasons. So you have to do some careful thinking. As soon as you leave the embassy or consulate, write down everything you remember about the interview. What questions were asked? How did you answer? Did the officer react strongly to any topic, job, family, previous travel, finances? Did they focus on a particular inconsistency? This is often where it helps to consult with an immigration attorney or a very experienced advisor. Sometimes you might not see what went wrong because you only go through this process once or twice in your life, while a lawyer has heard hundreds of client stories and can notice patterns right away. If you and a professional can identify a clear misunderstanding or a clear error, or time becomes very important. You don't want that misunderstanding to just sit in your record unchallenged. In those cases, you may want to act quickly, either by reapplying right away or by trying to contact the consulate directly with a well-explained clarification. There is no formal appeal process for a 214B denial. You can't file an appeal and ask a higher body to review the officer's decision. But in practice, there are two main ways to respond. 1, reapply for a new interview. 2, ask the consulate for reconsideration or clarification, usually via email, especially when there was a very obvious mistake before COVID. In some posts, you could get a new appointment within a few weeks. In that context, reapplying quickly didn't mean the refusal would sit in the system for long. Nowadays, in many countries, getting a new tourist visa slot can take months. That changes the strategy. If the wait time is very long, simply reapplying may not be the best first move, because it means your denial will just sit there while you wait, and you'll go through the whole stress and cost again without having addressed the root problem. In some situations, working with a lawyer to write to the consulate, clearly explaining the misunderstanding and attaching evidence may be more effective. When lawyers do this, they have to carefully balance being persistent and being respectful. Consular officers and consulates generally do not appreciate rude, aggressive messages, and there is never a guarantee that they will change their decision. But I have personally seen cases where a thoughtful, well-supported explanation led to the consulate acknowledging the issue and allowing a better outcome later. Just to be clear, when I say take it up with the consulate, I mean professional written communication, usually by email, not showing up at the consulate building or trying to pressure staff. Consulates are often slow to respond. It can take multiple polite follow-ups over weeks or even months. That persistence is often necessary. Let's talk about how soon you can reapply after a denial. Legally, there is no mandatory waiting period. You could be refused today and submit a new DS-160 and schedule a new appointment immediately if you can find an available slot. There is nothing in the law that says you must wait 3 months or 6 months. However, many consulates recommend on their websites that if you've had multiple denials, you should wait at least 6 months before trying again, unless something in your situation has clearly changed. And frankly, even without that recommendation, it's often not wise to keep applying again and again in a short time with no real difference in your case. Each application costs money, time, and emotional energy. And from the officer's point of view, if you keep returning with the same facts, it can start to look like desperation, which actually hurts your ability to prove you don't have immigrant intent. Someone who is extremely desperate to get into the US can look more like someone planning to overstay. So while you can reapply anytime, you should ask yourself, has anything significant changed since my last interview? Have I strengthened my ties to my home country? Have I corrected or clarified any misunderstandings from the last time? If the answer is no, it may be better to wait and work on those ties first. For many people, that might mean building a more stable, employment history, meaning getting promoted or improving your career position, traveling to other countries, getting visas there, and showing a pattern of returning home, strengthening your POW family, business, or property ties. At home, a rough guideline. After multiple refusals, if there is no urgent need to travel, it's often reasonable to wait for 6 months to a year before trying again, so that you have time to actually change the picture, not just roll the dice again. Now, another common worry. Does having a tourist visa denial on your record look bad in the future? Honestly, yes. Compared to someone who has never been refused, a denial on your record is not ideal. It's another data point that officers will see, but it is not the end of the road. Plenty of people have been denied once, even more than once, and later successfully obtained a tourist visa, or even other types of visas. Sometimes, after a denial, a person is later issued a visa with a shorter validity period, such as 1 year instead of 10. If they use that visa responsibly, short trips, always returning on time, that can help build a history that improves their situation later. If you have just one denial, don't assume you are permanently blocked. If you have multiple denials, that's when it becomes especially important to step back, analyze the situation, and possibly invest in a consultation with a professional to understand what the officer is likely seeing. So, what can you do to boost your chances? The next time you apply, first, review everything we've just discussed. Avoid inconsistencies between your DS-160, your words, your documents, and your actual history. Be your authentic self, instead of reciting generic scripts. Understand that the officer is testing your credibility and your non-immigrant intent. Second, take time to understand the legal standards and behind the decision. You must convince the officer you intend to visit temporarily, then leave. Show that you will respect the terms of your visa. No unauthorized work, no overstays. Demonstrate financial ability to support your trip without needing unauthorized employment. Prove strong ties to your home country, job, family, property, business, education, long-term projects, etc. The more clearly you can see your own case through that legal lens, the better you can express your true situation in a way that makes sense to the officer. Finally, remember that preparing for a tourist visa interview is not just about filling out a form. It's about understanding what story your facts tell, how you can present that story clearly and honestly in a few minutes, and what steps you can take over time to strengthen that story if you are not successful at first. I know from speaking to many people that visa denials feel deeply personal and unfair, especially if you see yourself as a responsible, law-abiding person who just wants to visit the US for a short trip. It can feel like a judgment on your character, even when the officer is really applying a legal test with limited time and limited information. I think of the tourist visa process as one of the most discretionary areas in all of US immigration. That can be frustrating, but it also means that how you present your case and what you do in between applications can make a real difference. Where possible, don't just keep applying again and again without changing anything. Do your best to identify the some likely reasons for the denial, address any misunderstandings or errors, strengthen your ties in your case before trying again. There are no guarantees, but that approach gives you a better chance than simply hitting reset every few months. If you found this helpful, please like the video and subscribe to Immigration Updates and Hub. for more content on U.S. visas, immigration law, and how to navigate the process in a realistic, informed way. And if there are specific topics you want me to cover, maybe a deeper dive into DS-160 questions, sample interview answers, or how to show strong home ties, leave a comment below. I do read them, and they help shape future videos. I wish you clarity, patience, and when the time is right, a smooth and successful trip to the United States.